Just for those of you who don't know, Asher Rubinstein is a life coach who's really focused on supporting dads, well, not just dads, but humans in health as well as business and life goals. And, you know, you've been on a journey to help hundreds of people to achieve their goals they've set out to. So you're a man in a position to be able to offer some really poignant advice, and that's exactly why I got you on to speak to the rest of the group.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in. Let's do it.
So Asher, you know, a lot of our dads, the feedback we've gotten from them is that time is very much a scarcity, and they've found it incredibly challenging to be able to find time to prioritize health in their life. And pretty much I just wanted to center our conversation about how we can take a little bit of a bird's eye view into what the structure of a day and a week and a month can look like, and how you may be able to find clarity in being able to get productive when it comes to your health.
Yeah, great. Yeah, spot on. Yeah, time is our most valuable resource. We can't get it back. So the way that we use our time is critical.
Beautiful.
Especially when you're a father, you've got kids running around, you've got to try and make time for everything. That's when the squeeze really starts to happen. So it's time to improve those skills.
So what would be, you know, the first thing that comes to mind when it comes to like opening up space that you didn't know existed before as a father?
Well, I think the first thing is to bear in mind that every single human on the planet has the same number of hours in the week, right? So this idea of I don't have time, it's like, it can be a little bit of a trap because we can look at all these people around the world achieving incredible things with the exact same amount of time as you have. If you look at Elon Musk, if you look at like any amazing world leader that has children, there are people who spend lots of time with their children. They look after their children. They're like committed parents, and they achieve amazing things at the same time. So I want to start by challenging this idea that we don't have time, because other people do. It's not that we don't have time. It's that maybe we're unclear on our priorities, or maybe we're not delegating time in alignment with our priorities, or it's that the strategies that we're using aren't efficient, aren't productive, aren't getting us where we want to go.
So to strip that back, how would we be able to identify and get clarity on what our priorities are?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So I've chatted with you already, and we've kind of come up with 10 steps in the process of creating a really solid schedule that honors everything that you need to do. And it starts with setting goals, getting clear on what it is that you want to achieve. And that is the first step. It's setting goals. There's a big difference between saying, I want to get healthy, and saying, I want to lose 5 kilos over the next 6 months, and I want to drop my body fat down to X% and build up my muscle mass to X%. So what I'm pointing towards is having very clear and specific goals. And the reason why, yeah, it's super important because we will tend to, our brains are really lazy, basically. We will tend to find the easiest way to accomplish most tasks, or the way that is most in our comfort zone. So if you say, I want to get healthy, then your brain just kind of pops in all the time with these rationalizations. Oh, you've done exercise this week already. You're good to eat that cake. Oh, you've lost 1 kilo, so you're doing well, so you can eat that cake. All these rationalizations, and the devil is in the details. So the more specific you are, the more clear about exactly which goal you're working towards, the harder it is for your brain to justify not pursuing the goal anymore until you've actually achieved it. A specific goal gives you that clear signal when you can celebrate that you've achieved your goal. And it also gives you that clear signal that you need to keep working when you haven't already achieved it.
Can I ask you a question just that came up on celebration for me? You know, I think a lot of people are very fearful of celebrating small wins along the way. They don't feel like they owe it to themselves. But what's your take on celebrating those small wins?
Yeah, I personally find it really important and really valuable. When we're working towards something long term, it can be very easy to fall into another trap, which is this kind of self-punishing, grueling, arduous approach to getting things done. And, you know, underlying that approach is this belief, I need to be very harsh and punitive with myself in order to get things done. And it comes from a place of low self-trust. It's like, I don't trust myself enough to enjoy the process, so I'm going to whip myself through it. And for one, that's just not a very enjoyable way of getting things done, right? It's painful. And for another, it's unsustainable. When you're punishing yourself to get things done, it becomes burdensome and it leads to burnout. So we need to create a relationship with ourselves where we're celebrating ourselves, where we have positive self-talk, where we're encouraging, where this is what I call the essence of your goal, right? So if you want to feel fit, if you want to be fit and healthy and empowered, and you're working towards that goal in a way that's dark and depressing and punishing, then the way that you feel is not matching up with the thing that you want to achieve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And when your feelings are at a low level and your goals are at a high level, like a high level of feeling, there's a gap. And it's a very hard gap to close. It's much easier to close that gap when you already feel in the way that you want to feel when you achieve the result. And I get that that's a bit vague, so I'll kind of make that a little bit more practical. So it's like, let's say I want to have a ripped six-pack and I want to feel really sexy and I want to feel really healthy and vibrant, right? So one way to do it would be I'm kind of like waking up in the morning feeling like shit, feeling depressed, and trusting and hoping that when I get that six-pack, I'll finally feel great, right? If I'm dragging my feet through the whole process, it's likely that I'm going to give up before I actually get there. So here's the alternative. We actually feel what we want to feel from the goal throughout the whole process. And we have this reserve of emotional fuel. It becomes motivation. It drives us to achieve the result in a much more enjoyable way. So the way that I would do that is I would say, when I've got that six-pack, how do I feel? How do I feel? I feel relieved. I feel attractive. I feel sexy. I feel strong. I feel self-trusting. And I breathe that in. I feel it through my whole body. Oh, wow. I actually feel a lot of energy. I feel really motivated. I feel driven. I trust myself. I'm excited. So if we can maintain that emotional state, which we can feel the essence of the goal, we become unstoppable. It completely transforms how we go about trying to achieve the goal, which means that we're much more likely to get the result.
So to me, you've broken down what could be seen as a very esoteric, concept, but to me, that's really made it an incredibly tangible process. You're creating a level of, for lack of a better word, vibration that is coherent with where you want to be. And if you can remain consistent with that, you're really just feeling the way you want to feel once you've achieved your goal. So it makes complete and utter sense to me.
Yeah, awesome.
So what's next? You've got your goals. What's the next step in the plan?
Yeah, so I'll just flag that there's a question of how. How do we feel the essence of our goals? So it's not just as simple as choosing. There are processes for that. And I can direct your listeners to resources for how to do that. So I want to signpost that.
That'd be unbelievable. We'll put it in the notes.
Yeah, I'll write out a whole big document about everything that I've named in this interview. And I'll give a bunch of pointers and things. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Cool.
That's great.
So the next piece is, once you've got a clear goal and once you're embodying that goal, you're feeling that goal, the next step is to have a very clear, intentional strategy about how you're going to achieve it. So I can be inspired and invigorated about getting six-pack abs, but if my strategy is to eat donuts, I'm not going to get there, right? So the key with a strategy is to find someone who's walked the path before, someone who knows how to do it, and learn from them. Find out what their strategy was. So for you guys, this is going to be Paulie and Dan, presumably, right? These guys have walked the path. They know how to achieve the results. So it's really about trusting the experts that the strategy is going to work.
I mean, this to me is a really interesting part in the chain of events, because without a tangible strategy, you're right, mindset means nothing, and vice versa. Without being equipped with an empowering mindset, strategy also means nothing. You can't have one without the other, and I've seen this time and time again. I've seen my own personal clients come in being experienced, signed up to many different courses online to be able to achieve health results, and not being able to get there because they didn't have the right goals, they didn't have the right mindset to be able to achieve it, and vice versa. They've come in with a can-do attitude, but have not been given the right guidance by the people they needed to be able to get towards that next step.
Exactly. Yeah, bingo.
Yeah, great. This is all making perfect sense to me so far, and I hope it's shining a light of clarity on how to achieve those results. So what's next?
Yeah, for sure. Well, once you've got your strategy, then there's this question of how you're going to roll it out in your own life. How you're going to actually apply it and fit it in with everything that you're actually doing, right? And basically, it's a question of time and task management. It's a question of knowing what tasks you need to do, knowing what order you need to do them in, and knowing when you're going to fit them into your week. So in the context of health, when you're in a program like this, you can pretty much get your tasks prescribed to you by the experts. That's part of what you're paying for. You don't have to worry about that. But the question in your mind is probably going to be, when the hell am I going to find all the time to do this? And the key that I find is, firstly, to set up for yourself non-negotiable standards. These are things that you do week in, week out, no matter what. And, it's not about being dictatorial. If you skip a session here and there, you forgive yourself and you maintain that self-loving and self-accepting attitude, but you have a really authentic, genuine commitment to do certain things each day and each week, no matter what.
To me, the amount of hours in a week, that 168 hours that you touched on earlier in our conversation, whenever I tell myself subconsciously that I don't have time to complete this and I don't have time to complete that, I always have that number 168 just burning into the back of my head, because everybody has the same amount of hours in that week. And I just want to kind of urge all the listeners to really kind of shine a light on that, because it's always helped me to be a little bit more productive. And, starting at an achievable level when it comes to health and wellness, so you get those easy wins, can really, really create a little bit of positive momentum in order to make those further steps down the path.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When we set goals and we set standards, they need to feel achievable. If we set goals and standards that we don't genuinely believe that we're able to achieve, then subconsciously we're going to give up. And then we look back on 2 months later and it's like, yeah, I wanted to achieve it, but I didn't really try. So when we set it and we feel like it's achievable, when we set a low bar that we know we can achieve, get a few wins on the board, and then start to become more and more ambitious, that's way more sustainable. In the long run, it's going to help you achieve a lot more. And I want to really challenge this idea again that we don't have enough hours in the week. I want to break that down a bit as well. It's like we have conscious goals, right? We want to be fit, we want to be healthy, we want to look after our family, and then we've got the resistance, right? We've got, oh wow, in this moment I don't really want to work out, I just want to watch TV. Yeah. And it highlights the difference between our conscious goals and our subconscious patterns. And if you've been gradually putting on weight and becoming less strong for years, then your subconscious patterns are stuck in the world of not being fit. And so those subconscious patterns will give you all these very persuasive, compelling reasons to stay where you are. And they'll tell you, I don't have enough time. Right? They'll tell you there's always something more important to do. And they'll tell you anything that they can tell you to just keep things the way that they are, whether the way that they are aligns with your goals or it doesn't. So when we hear all these things coming up in our head saying, no, we really want to check, are the thoughts that are happening in my head aligned with my goals? Are they empowering me, or are they just keeping me in what's familiar? So yeah, I think that sometimes we genuinely don't have time, and sometimes our subconscious patterns are just holding us in what's familiar. So we really need to question that.
Yeah, love it.
And then there's the question of practically, how do I actually schedule time in for this stuff, right? I think that's what we're moving towards.
Definitely. And this is, I think all of the stuff that you discussed earlier is such a solid foundation and prerequisite for this planning component, because without it, it's almost like, you can't play tennis without a tennis racket. You need to have the tool set there to be able to execute. And when it comes to this planning, because I get a lot of people and fathers that reach out who are in a time of need. They're working 2 or 3 jobs, 12 or 14 hours a day, and they're on the road a lot, and I get it. That's a very confronting situation to be in. So to somebody who is working for a 12-hour day, how would you really extract a solution-focused mindset?
Yeah, it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge, because how do you find time to plan your week, let alone time to actually do the exercise? Right? So honestly, I think all of us, even if we're working 70-hour weeks, it's in our best interests to set aside time where we think strategically about our life. Because you can work 70-hour weeks and achieve very little, or you can work 70-hour weeks and achieve a tremendous amount. But the difference between the person who works 70 hours a week and earns 60 grand a year and the person who works 70 hours a week and earns $6 million a year a year is partly that'd be a great year. Is partly because they're intelligent. They strategize how they use their time. So if we look at Tim Ferriss, for example, multimillionaire, highly successful, highly effective, he's like an icon of health and fitness. He is highly strategic. He spends a lot of time thinking and planning, and then when he acts, he achieves a tremendous amount in a short period of time. And I'm not suggesting that you live the life of Tim Ferriss. That's not what I'm suggesting. But what I'm saying is carve out at least an hour or two each week where you look at your next week and you say, what are my values? What are my priorities? You zoom out. What's really important and what's just my habit? And you might realize, I'm doing 70 hours of work a week, but actually my health and my family are a much higher priority and I'm not honoring them. And if you really feel your values, or it might be the opposite, maybe it's too much time in family, not enough time on work. But the point is that you really spend some time to feel into what's deeply important for you, and then set aside time for those things in advance.
Yeah, great. So once you've identified these things that resonate with you, I believe we move towards that execution moment.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how that looks.
Yeah, so let's say you've mapped out your schedule, you've set aside time for the things that are important for you, you've found a way to make it work. And then the question is, when the time comes for the actual exercise, how do you do it? Yeah. And there's multiple factors that support you. And the first one that I find is most powerful is consistency. Again, we're creatures of habit. We like to do what's familiar. So the first time that you get up to work out, it's going to be a lot harder than the 20th time if you're doing it every single week on the same time and the same day. Because we learn through habit. So really important to be consistent. And it just gets easier and easier because we're creatures of habit. That's the first piece, consistency. The second piece is to have community around you. This is a key piece. We are so influenced by the people who are major players in our lives. It's massive. And if the people around you are unhealthy and lazy, then it's very, very tempting to stay and be unhealthy and lazy. If you're surrounding yourself by people who are inspiring, people who are growing, people who are healthy and fit, that's going to call you to your best self. So that second factor would be find groups, find community groups, find individuals to spend your time with to inspire you to become healthier in your activities.
I want to just use that as a call out to everybody here who's listening to this. I know that everybody here who's listening to this interview wants to be a better version of themselves, wants to step into their fitter, healthier self and their more productive self. And if you currently don't feel that you are quite there, use the people around you, use the community that you have right here to be able to lift your vibration level up, to be able to achieve those goals and to be able to want to achieve those goals and prioritize it.
Yeah, totally. And I do this myself. Like when I was really committed to growing my business, and I struggled for a year, then I surrounded myself with a community who were just nailing it in the coaching industry. It just became so much more achievable. It just felt obvious. Of course, I'm going to nail it because look, everyone else is doing it. When I wanted to,
you go.
Yeah, when I wanted to build my muscle mass, I wasn't doing any strength training. And the people around me, I was doing yoga. Everyone was doing yoga. That's just how things were. And I wanted to build my muscle mass. I was feeling fatigued. I was getting like muscle pain. And I just decided to start going to strength training classes with people who are really passionate about building muscle. And it's just around you. We subconsciously receive all these signals from around us. And my muscle mass grew significantly and much more easily. It's a very powerful motivational tool.
I suppose the expectations of the group vary dramatically depending on which group you're in. Hence, via osmosis, the expectations of yourself will vary dramatically based on the group that you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, subconsciously, we want to fit in with the tribe.
Yeah.
We like to think of ourselves as coming up with all our own values, but in reality, we're massively influenced by the people we're around.
Yeah, it's tapped into who we are as humans.
Totally. Should we go to the next piece?
Please.
Cool. So the next piece is to surround yourself by mentors, people who, I mean, it's kind of similar to the community piece, but to be with people who have already got the results that you want, so that when you look at them, it feels really possible. People who are in your situation and now aren't, right? Because that will inspire your belief in your own possibility of doing it.
You know, I can't touch on this more as such a powerful component to the equation of success. You know, when I was coming up, when I was a young trainer, I think subconsciously I tapped into this quite potently, and I ended up gravitating towards people who, and trainers who were more experienced than me, who had figured out what I wanted to figure out, but they figured it out in a way of by making their own mistakes, and they've almost like decluttered all the things that I then didn't need to go through. Obviously, I needed to figure out my own journey, but they really just crystallized the equation for me. And I think that's such a powerful thing in every component of your life. So that's a really good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then the next piece is the shadow work piece, which is like so undervalued. And it's this idea that, you know, in our childhood, we learn how to be in the world, right? And some of those learnings are really empowered. Some of them say, yeah, you can achieve what you want. Hard work, discipline, self-love, compassion, resilience, all these potent qualities. And some of the things we learn in childhood are actually quite disempowering. So on some level, you might feel shame about your health. You might feel, oh, I'm not healthy enough and I never will be. There might be that little part of you that's really doubting whether you deserve to be healthy, whether you're able to be healthy, right? And the way that looks is when you're trying to do exercise, there's this doubt and this fear or this anxiety that comes up when you're trying to do the work, or around diet, or around any part of life, right? So what I call this the shadow, right? It's the part of us that we don't really confront or see. It's the hidden part of your psychology. And when we ignore the shadow, it ends up controlling our behavior in ways that don't serve us, right? So if I'm ashamed about my body and I don't believe I'm going to get healthy and I set myself a diet, and then I try and live it, there's going to be these voices in my head saying, you know, just give up. There's no point. It's very disempowering, right? But when we face the shadow, when we say, okay, there's a part of me that doubts this. There's a part of me that's scared. There's a part of me that thinks it's not possible or that I don't deserve it. And I'm going to consciously connect with and support. You could call it the inner child, right? So if my inner child is scared and I say to my inner child, hey, I know you're scared, but I've got you and I love you and I'm going to look after you, and you cultivate that conscious relationship, you're way, way more able to take the action that's required. And go ahead. Continue.
No, what I was going to just mention was I find this incredibly interesting, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to tackle a subconscious behavior with a conscious activity, and this is where things can start to get quite murky, and it takes a certain level of self-awareness and self-analysis to be able to really tap into that subconscious. So I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that and try and flesh that out.
Totally. It's like an unexplored world, right? It's a real, it's a unique skill to be able to do that. And you can actually recruit people to support you in that. If you don't have experience in it, I highly recommend seeing a therapist or a coach. Therapists tend to be more like healing illness focused, whereas a coach will tend to be more empowering achievement and fulfillment focused. That's a massive generalization. But yeah, if this is something that you're interested in pursuing and you don't have the experience to do it yourself, I recommend recruiting someone to support you.
Great. And, you know, just as a resource, we'll have your details down below here as well, so people can reach out to you if that's okay with you, Asher.
Yeah, absolutely. I love doing this kind of work. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, great. Sorry, continue.
Sure. Yeah. So, oh my God, we've covered so many things. Like, you know, on the execution side, I've covered consistency, community, mentorship, shadow work. And I think the last piece on that execution point that I'd cover is being accountable. And what I mean by that is you can hold yourself accountable. That's helpful. You can have like tick boxes on your wall around the things that you do every week. That I find that to be a very powerful motivational tool. And you can also be accountable to others. So what I find really helpful is I have a training partner around big goals in my life, and we meet up once a week. We talk for an hour, and I tell them, this week, these are the 5 things that I'm going to nail. And then when I come back to them a week later, I tell them, what am I celebrating? What were my challenges, and what are my commitments for the next week? And that's something you can do with your group here in the Hero Academy. That's something you can do with your coach. It's another very potent motivational tool.
That's unbelievable. That's really concise and gives you some very clear takeaways. And that's something that we can all do in all components of our lives. But talking about health and wellness, you can really just like nut down on what you're trying to achieve. So thanks for that example that you gave with your training partner as well. Look, Asher, this has been like truly a really unbelievable experience. You've given us so much information and so much to think about and digest and hopefully act on as well, because these are the things that, like you said before, a strategy without mindset and accountability is worth very little. So I think that the key here is to be able to take, even if we take, one thing from this conversation and act on it, that's going to be a great deal more important than being able to, being able to digest all of it and act on none of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not telling you this so that you can have some nice ideas that make you feel like you're creating progress. Because that's bullshit. That's total bullshit. I'm here offering you these tools so that you can actually use them and actually get results and actually get more success and feel more fulfilled in life. So if you appreciate, to the listeners, if you value what you've heard, if you find it useful, the biggest thanks you can give me and the biggest service you can do yourself is to actually choose something and take action on it consistently.
I love that, Asher. And on that note, I think we're going to just wrap things up because it's been such an amazing, jam-packed, just punch of value. And I think, you know, guys, we're going to have this up and you'll be able to rewatch this over and over again. And I really suggest you do that and take notes because you're going to be able to take things out, act on it, and just get a great deal more value out of all aspects of your life. So thanks again, Asher.
Yeah, all good, Paulie. Such a pleasure to help you. Yeah,
such a pleasure to have you on board.
I'm a fan.
The feeling is more than mutual. And like I said earlier, we're going to have your details down below as well as some really detailed notes that you've contributed as well. So thank you once again, my man.
All good, brother. Bye-bye.